Well, once again, welcome everyone. Thank you for visiting our lecture. And this is our third lecture. The first one was about Nobel Prize winners from Russia. The second was about the um, sort of made up, illusionary rivalry between Tolstoy and Dostoevsky. And today we're covering let's say, if the second lecture was about the most popular writers, Russian writers of the 19th century. Today we're talking about the most popular writer and his book of the 20th century. And many people think that it's a scandalous and mystical and cursed book, etc., etc., etc. But today we're going to talk about um, the 6 keys to understand this book. Before we go into it a little deeper, I just want to know if anyone is familiar with this book. So just show of hands who read this book. Yeah, so we have, yeah. Well, yeah, yeah. You read the Margarita part, right? Not the master part. Yeah. No, but the main thing is that I just want to uh, preface my lecture with is that even if you've read the book before, uh, which is obviously good, but after this lecture, I encourage you to reread it. Okay, if you haven't, I think it would be nice if you take a chance with that book. I'm not sure if it has a very good translation to English, but I can't complain about that. Okay, it's not the perfect one, but it's okay. But if I know some of you learn Russian, right? Some of you are even good Russian speakers, although despite being foreigners, which is great, good for you. So if you can read it in Russian, that would be even greater, of course. So the main idea of today's lecture is the devil wins, and we'll see why this title has been chosen for this lecture. But before we go into it, I just want to have a short recap of what is happening in the book, right? So it essentially has two different novels inside one. The first one, or the main one, is happening in Moscow in 1920s. We're not giving the exact year, but it's happening in that decade. And it's happening during the Easter week, from Wednesday to Sunday. And the main idea is that the devil, whose name is Voland, he comes to Moscow with his servants, right, to wreak havoc, as we would say, right, to wreak havoc upon people. And during this process, he also his path intersects deeply with the paths of the titular, the Master and Margarita. Right, those are two characters that were not planned right at the beginning by Bulgakov. He wanted to write a story of the devil visiting Moscow. He didn't want to write this pretty love story, right, of the Master and Margarita, and we'll talk about the love story a little further. But eventually he did add that bit. And the second plot line, the second novel that is included quite masterfully, I might say, inside that plot of Moscow of the 20th and the Devil's Visit, is the work of the Master. The Master is a historian and a writer who wanted to revisit those days in Jerusalem that changed the world, right, forever. The last days of Jesus, or as he's called in this novel by his Jewish pronunciation, right, by the Jewish pronunciation, Yeshua HaNotzri, right, Jesus from the Nazareth. And so the thing is that the Master writes the novel about Yeshua, about Jesus, right? So that part, the Jerusalem part, is actually Master's novel, right? So it's novel inside the novel. So those two different plot lines develop, and of course we know what happens in the Jerusalem part, right? Yes, we all know the story of the Jesus. But what happens in the Moscow part is, of course, the most interesting bit. And so we'll talk about that deeper. But as I said, this lecture is about 6 keys that we might need to have to understand the novel properly. And by properly, I mean from the literature and religious and social way, right? And the first key is what I would call the nature of the devil in Bulgakov's Master and Margarita. And can I have one more show of hands? Just show of hands who knows the greatest romantic poem of all time, Johann Goethe's Faust. Yes, you know about it, or if you've heard about it at least, or you read it, which is great. So the thing is that the main, well, all the historians and all the people who study Bulgakov, they agree that the main inspiration for the Master and Margarita was Goethe's Faust. They agree upon that. But what they miss, or might I say, what they fail to go further to, is that it's not the inspiration. It's actually the continuation of the story. I would like to make a bold claim that the Master and Margarita and Faust happen in the same meta universe. And Voland is actually the Mephistopheles from Faust. Yeah. So these two nice people are actually the same person, not only in a let's say symbolic way, right, but literally the same person, right? What is there to prove that point, right? So first of all, the main idea of, well, as you can see here on the right picture where we have Voland, he holds a cane just like me, but his cane is fancier, right? He holds a cane, and what do you call it? A knob, right? A knob of this cane is a poodle, is a head of a poodle, right? A dog. And it's a very thin, let's say, thin point from Bulgakov to make it a poodle, which is not an obvious choice for the devil, right? We would expect a snake head, or I don't know, a dragon probably, or something like that, right? But it's a poodle. And why is it? If you remember Faust, the first time the Mephistopheles and the Faust encounter each other is when Mephistopheles wants to enter Faustus' room, right, or house. And as you know from the Kabbalah, probably, and the Christian mythology as well, is that demons or devil, they cannot enter one's room without the direct invitation or without the direct permission, right? And to gain that permission, Mephistopheles turns itself into a dog, into a poodle, right? And he follows Mephistopheles and tries to get into his room. And yeah, so that's a symbol of Mephistopheles. It's not a natural symbol for the devil in general, right? Again, natural symbol for the devil is usually a bat or a snake, right, or a dragon, something like that. But it's not a poodle. But of course, Mephistopheles turned himself into the most friendly thing, right? The most friendly creature that a person would naturally invite into his house. And this is the scene from Faust where Mephistopheles tries to sort of befriend him. And in the Bulgakov's plot, when Margarita becomes the queen of the ball of the Satan, or of Poland, of course, right? The queen of the ball, he gives her a necklace with a poodle head, right? So that's also a symbol. And of course, he loves that symbol, yeah, because that's the same person. Right? Faust and Mephistopheles and Voland are the same person. And we also have this his favorite festivity, right? Favorite festival that he arranges once in a couple of 100 years, right? He arranged that in Faust, the Walpurgisnacht, right? And he arranged it in Master Margarita, the Great Satan's Ball, right? So that's also his favorite thing to do. He likes to sort of celebrate his achievements during that time that he is present on Earth for whatever reason. But what happens in Faust that is not in favor of the devil is that he loses the game. Right? If you remember, right at the beginning, they have a meeting with God. Mephistopheles and God meet, and they sort of place a bet on Faust. Right? They say that, okay, I'll try to seduce him, and God says, no, I believe in him. He's fine. He will be fine. Right? And Mephistopheles does indeed seduce him, but then because Faustus' intention was always knowledge and truth and veritas, right? Then he was pardoned by the god himself and let into the paradise, right? So the devil loses with Faust. He places his bet. He wants to play a game with him, but he loses in that game. And so you you know the devil, right? He's quite a venturous and gambling person, and he holds a grudge when he loses, right? He's a very proud one. So he lost, and he took a grudge, and he wanted to gamble again. But now he thinks of the ways that he can achieve that. And by the way, another parallel and another proof that we can have that they are the same person is that during that Walpurgisnacht festivity in Faust, he introduces Mephistopheles, introduces himself as Junker Voland, right? So that's just his another name. And so, yeah, and when he comes to Moscow, of course, Mephistopheles is quite a loud name for the Moscovians in 1920s, right? So he introduces himself as Professor Volland from Germany, that he is a historian who studies mystical knowledge or whatever. And so he starts to devise a plan to finally win in this game of Faust, right? To finally seduce that man that the god places his bet on. And thus we come to the second key. Who is Faust? Right? The second key to understanding. So the first key was we understand that Voland and Mephistopheles are the same person, and they are in a big grudge. They want to win this game of Faust, right? But who is Faust? Because we have this archetypal plot during the whole history of people, having folklore tales and writing whatever fiction, right? Legends and myths, that there is usually a trickster type person who makes a deal with supernatural being, right? It can be, after the spread of Christianity, it's usually devil and demons, etc. But before that, even, right, there were different types of supernatural entities that were entering in that relationship, right, of making a deal with people who wanted more than they were given, right? And of course, Aladdin comes to mind, right? Aladdin, the Arabian character from the tale, the 1001 Tales. He makes this deal with the jinn, right? Genie, that we know from the Disney movie, is actually the jinn, the Arabian type of evil creature, right? Evil demon type creature. In Russian folklore, we have a lot of those, right? We have Pushkin's The Golden Fish. It's actually a fairy, right? It's a sea fairy. It's a fish that grants wishes, right, etc. Or we have another fish with Yemele, right, that goes and he catches a fish, and then again she grants him wishes. So we have a lot of different. In every single culture, we have this archetypal type of people who make deals with the supernatural. But Faust is different. What do you know about people who were asking the supernatural to grant them wishes? They usually do that for money, right? For the status, for whatever, for I don't even love, right? Again, Aladdin, he wants to marry the Jasmine, right, as we call, but she's actually Budur, the Princess Budur in the original one, not Jasmine. But Faust is different. Faust makes a deal not for love, not for status, not for money. He makes a deal for veritas, to know the whole truth of the universe, right? He makes this deal to reach that pinnacle of wisdom. And because of that, nothing the devil makes or does can tempt him, can seduce him, right? Yes, he succeeds in making a deal, right? But after that, he tries to seduce him with love, with Gretchen, right? He can't do that. Yes, I mean they sort of fall in love. Faust doesn't fall in love. He's a man of brain, right? But he makes love to Gretchen, right? And then she bears his child, but then she kills it, right? Because he doesn't have any money to feed the child, etc. And even that, Faust is sort of angry, right? Angry with Mephistopheles because Gretchen has killed herself, but he's not angry that he made her do that. He's angry that Mephistopheles um, hid that information about it, right? See that small bit? Because he doesn't feel angry that, or he doesn't feel guilty that he made Gretchen kill herself, or not kill herself, sorry, kill her baby, and then she was found guilty and she was executed, right? He doesn't feel guilty about that. And he doesn't feel angry with Mephistopheles for sort of arranging that situation. No, he's angry with Mephistopheles because he didn't tell him that, right? Again, the whole core of Faust is to know everything. You cannot hide any information from him, right? He doesn't blame you for doing bad, but he says, "Tell me that, explain me that. I want to know everything," right? And that's why he's pardoned. He's pardoned for being willing to know everything that's happening in the universe, right? And that his character is so addicted and dedicated, but addicted to knowledge, right? That he doesn't do anything bad by he is amoral, right? He doesn't have morality. It's not that he's immoral, he's amoral. Like children. Children don't know morality. They're clean, right? So he's that. He doesn't know what morality is. He's too focused on knowledge, right? He doesn't care about what's moral or not. But the second, main characteristic of Faust, again, the first one, he's a genius, alchemist, right? Back at that time, but today we can say scientist, right? Is a genius scientist, and that's the main thing about him. And the second main thing about him is that he's active, dynamic, right? Strong, very dedicated, right? Almost like a maniac. He sees his target, he sees his objective, doesn't do anything but that. Doesn't care about anything but that. And so Mephistopheles, or Voland, from now we can call him Voland, right? He understands if he finds another type of person like him, right? Another person like him, he will lose again. So what does he need to do? He needs to separate that Faust entity. He needs to divide that one creature into two, right? And he starts to slowly build up for that. Around a year before the main plot of the Master and Margarita happens, he sends, we can say he sends, right? A sort of help to the Master. He is working at the museum. And funny enough, when we say museum, right, in the contemporary time, and even if we were in the Soviet Union, let's say after 1950s, right, or even before that, before 1910, let's say, in Moscow, if we said museum, right, there's no any specification to that, right? There's no clarity in that. It can be any museum. It's a museum, right? But we need to know a little historical context here. In 1920s, right after the establishment of the Soviet Union, right? the collapse of not only the Tsarist Russia, but also all the in between segments. Right, there was different types of government regimes after the Tsarist regime, and then before the Soviet Union. Right, in the 1920s, there was only one museum in Moscow functioning properly. It was the Museum of the Great Revolution, right? So we understand that the master, who is genius, author, and scientist, he's historian, right? And he wants to know the true history, but he sees this terror. For every historian, the horror is that people change history, right? People sort of try to wrap it up, try to cover up all the bad things they did, and they try to shine the light on the things that they sort of did better, or I don't know. So he works in the Museum of Revolution, and of course he's getting frustrated about that. And so he wants to write a historical book about that those 7 days, well, not 7 days, 4 days, right, from Wednesday to Sunday. That Easter week in Jerusalem in 19 what? Sorry, 19 in 1000 and what 33, right? Happening in that year. So he wants to do that, but he doesn't have any money. He doesn't even have a place to live at. He lives in the museum itself. So he's very poor, but he wants to fully dedicate himself into writing that great novel that he has in mind. And during his frustration, during his almost depressive time, he finds a lottery ticket in a pile of dirty laundry, which is a great symbol, right? All the help from the devil comes from the dirty places, right? He finds this lottery ticket in a pile of dirty laundry, and he sees it as a sign, right? And then he uses that lottery ticket, and guess what? He wins a huge amount of money, right? And by that, he actually signs his deal and makes his deal with the devil, right? And of course, the devil grants him everything that he wants. Now he has a flat. It's not good. It's in the basement, but it's good for him, right? Because before that he hadn't had any place to live at. So now he has a flat. He has all the time in the world, right? Because he's a lot of money now. He has all the time in the world to finish his novel, and he did finish his novel. And then when he published it, he got destroyed by all the critics, right? And then he burns that first manuscript, right, of his novel. And so he is depressed now. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't want to live. And then he just roams about Moscow without anything to do. And then he sees this young woman. Excuse me. Yeah. Sorry. And then he sees this young woman in a huge crowd, right? Because it's a weekend in Moscow. It's near the Moskva River, and so there are a lot of people. But he sees this fantastic woman, and he understands that something is wrong with her. But then she carries with her a bouquet of, as he said, ugly, troubled yellow flowers, right? He hates those flowers. He says that yellow color is making him anxious, right? It's not good that he carries those. And he can't say what they were. He said that they were mimosas, but that's actually not very true, probably, because the timing is not very good, right? Because mimosas don't bloom in that time. And so, and then she comes to him. So she sees that he's staring at her, right? And so she comes closer, and then she says, "Do you like those flowers?" He says, "I hate those." He says, "Why don't you like flowers at all?" He says, "I love flowers, but not those ones." "What do you like?" He says, "Red roses, probably." And then she just throws away the whole bouquet in the sewers. But then Master, picks them, right? And then when he tries to give them back to her, trying to, saying sorry, right? She just walks away. And this scene is the meeting of two Fausts. The one Faust that is genius, and the one Faust that is strong, almost maniac, right? She's dedicated, she's aggressive, she's very, very strong. That's the main idea. And he is weak, right? The master is weak. He's now depressed. The real Faust, the combination of those two characteristics, the original Faust would never feel depression. He would always know that he's dedicated into that one goal of knowing everything. But this one, after the first bump, he just fell down, right? And he was destroyed by the critics. So he was not the true Faust. He was the genius one, but not the strong one. And she wasn't the genius one, but the strong one, right? So now we have these two different Fausts. And this is the perfect sort of play done by Mephistopheles / Voland, right? Because he knows that now he can win that battle. We'll talk about Master and Margarita a little bit later, and we'll talk about little details and their love story afterwards. But I just want to give you a hint about another key. So that's the second key, right? That the Fausts are now two different people. One is genius, another one is strong and dedicated. That's the second key. The third key is related to to Matthew the Apostle, the sort of the closest, right? One of the closest friends and followers of Jesus. And in this plot, he is sort of a right hand of Yeshua HaNotzri, Matthew the Apostle. He is the messenger, and he gives the orders on behalf of Jesus, right? So why do we have him in the story? And he actually gives orders to Voland himself, right? Because when at the end of the story, when Voland wants to leave Moscow, Matthew the Apostle comes to him, and he talks to him and says, like, he orders him what to do, right? And why Voland would listen to Matthew the Apostle, even if he brings the orders from the Jesus, right? Why would the devil listen to that? And here again, we might need to refer to Faust and see that Mephistopheles there is not the antagonist of the god, right? He cannot be. He is just a joker, a trickster that God loves to interact with because it makes him, amused, right? And that he says that, right, in Faust. The god says, "Oh, I love you, the prince of lies," right? And out of all the princes of lies, I love you the most because you always make me fun, right? You bring me joy. So he is a page, a joker of the god, right? He's not the equal. He's not on par with him. He's not the antagonist, right? Here we have Voland in the same role. He didn't change at all. He is still a servant of the god. He is not an antagonist, right? And that's why he takes orders from Matthew the Apostle, because he brings messages from Jesus, right? And the thing is that he brings with him. He didn't come to Moscow alone, right? And I'm sure you know about that. He brings with him a group of servants, a nice, colorful, brilliant group of servants. So why does he need them, right? Why didn't he come alone as he did a couple of 100 years ago, right? To test Faust. Why now? Well, 2,000 years have passed from those events, right, in Jerusalem. And God wants to test people, right? He wants to see if people have changed at all. He wants to see if they deserve to live further, right? Or if not, we'll just wipe them out, right? And so he sends Voland to test people, right? And he does indeed with his, while he is very focused on that game, right? A big game of seducing Faust, right? His crew are doing all the dirty work. They're testing the people, right? And they're coming to the variety theater and they're having their show, and it's a magic show, right? They're taking the heads out of people, etc., and jumping from one balcony to another, especially the cat one, right? We'll talk about his crew a little bit deeper. And they also throw money on people, and people of course getting crazy about that, and they take all the money, and then it turns out that the money is fake, of course, right? And then they sell, well, not sell, but just give away fancy, the nicest clothes. And imagine 1920s, right? Russia is in crisis after the Civil War, the First World War, the Revolution, etc. So Russia is now in crisis, and now they have money that the devil gave them, right? And now they have the fanciest costumes, the clothes, and everything. And then they wear them, and they dress up, and they look beautiful, and they all come to the variety theater, and then all the clothes are vanishing, right? And they're naked or in their underwear, right? And they're like, oh, panicking, etc. So the devil, again, he tempts them, he tests them, right? It tests if people are falling into his trap of money, of status, of nice clothes, of show, etc., right? And yeah, he succeeds in that. Uh, the test has proven itself successful, but the people have failed, right? The test was successful. And so let's talk about his team or crew or servants a little bit deeper. So he has four main servants, and we'll talk about them gradually, starting from the most, let's say, from the closest one, right, hierarchically, from the closest one to the, well, let's say, from the to the bottom of the hierarchy. And the closest one is this funny-looking gentleman in nice glasses and a checkered jacket, right? He is he seems to be just crazy petty person, right? But he actually is the closest one to the devil. He is he was the great knight before in the medieval times, and then he was so brave and so strong that he felt that he could challenge the devil, and he made some jokes about him, dirty jokes that the devil didn't like at all. And so he turned him into his servant. And because he was that great and strong, he made him the closest one, right? So his name is, and this one on the left, his name is Koroviev, and his nickname is the Phage, right? So the Phage, and I will be calling him the Phage. He is actually one of the heretics of the hell, right? And his main servant. And when the whole team leaves Moscow, and Margarita sees everyone the first time she sees them in their real form, right, in the real shape, she's so confused. She sees him. She sees this Joker, the trickster, in such a glory, right? He's shining knight in this shiny what do you call those? Well, whatever, metal outfit, right, of the knights, and he's so grumpy. He's so focused, which is an absolute contrast, right, with his human appearance, because he's jolly and funny and everything, and he's crazy and mad, but now he's just a grumpy, shiny knight. And she's confused, and she starts to ask, okay, what happened to him? And then the devil tells her this story about him joking around, right, many hundred years ago, and that he just turned himself into a slave of the devil. The second one on the right is Zazel, and you've probably heard that name, right? It's the classic demon name from the Jewish Kabbalah and the early Christian manuscripts as well. Azazel is one of the barons of the hell as well. He is the knight of torture and murder, right? He is the murderous devil. And sorry, no, this one on the right one. Yeah, this is Fate. This is the Phage, and this is Azazel. Yeah, and yeah, so he brings him to, again, because he is the main force, right? He's the soldier. If the Phage is the main trickster, right, the Azazel is the main force, right? He's the soldier of the hell, and he brings him again to kill as many people as possible, to wreak as much havoc as possible on Moscow. The next one is this. Yes. Does he equate Beelzebub? No, he's not Beelzebub. No, he's Azazel. It's different. Well, Beelzebub is just a different Baron of Hell, right? He's just a different ruler of one of the hell provinces, regions, right? Because Beelzebub is the one who sends. Is the god of insects, right? He's the one who well, spreads plagues and everything, right? He's the one to do that. But Azazel is just the murder torturer, right? Is a different type of demon, right? So the third one, and 100% the most favorite person of every single person who read the Master and Margarita, right? The cat, the huge humanoid-like cat, Behemoth, and as you know, Behemoth is also one of the names of the hellish creatures. And he is actually a page of Poland, and he appears to be a young, beautiful, handsome boy, right? When he is again leaving Moscow, and Margarita sees him, right, and says, "Oh my God, yeah, right. He's not cat. He's not a cat. He's just a young, nice-looking boy, and in this blonde, everything in his page uniform." So he's just a helper, right? The servant of Voland. But in Moscow, he appears to be this huge cat, black cat. He is the By the way, Behemoth is the demon of gluttony, right? And so he always eats. He always tries to fool around with people, etc., etc. The nicest character, no doubt. And the fourth one is Gela, the chthonic creature. She's not from hell. She's from underworld, right? She's not a demon. She's an ancient underworld creature, compared to Medusa, the Gorgon from the Gorgon sisters, right? Compared to Hela in Scandinavian mythology, right? The queen of the dead. So she's compared to a lot, and she's vampiress. What, vampiress? Do we have that? What's the female for vampire? Well, she's a female vampire, right? And she's a witch, and she's just crazy. This crazy woman who seduces everyone, like a succubus, right, or something like that. So she has these lots of different roles in the story, but at the same time, her character and her appearance in the story is so subtle that many people they forget about her, because uh, the Phage is such a colorful person, right? He knows everything about people. He knows about their psychology. He tempts them. He seduces them. He laughs over them. Azazel is this crazy looking person with his wild, wicked eyes that wants to kill people. Behemoth is this huge cat making fun of people again, right? Taking their heads off and everything. Heads, not heads. Heads, right? Ripping them, etc. So he's just this group is just crazy, right? But all of them are colorful. And Gela, for some reason, just is usually forgotten, right? Although she's quite colorful as well. She's always naked, right? Which is something that people would remember, right? Um, she can sort of, what would you call that? She has this plastic body, right? As vampires sometimes do. She can make her arms longer. She can make her hands bigger, right? So she has a lot of different supernatural powers, and she makes one of the variety theaters officials vampire as well. She just bites him and then leaves, and he becomes vampire. right? So she makes her bit as well. She plays her role as well, but for some reason she's just forgotten. And by the way, when they leave Moscow, she's not among them. She's not in the crew that goes to hell, right? Again, she's not from hell. She's more ancient, unknown being representing the underworld, right? She's just this crazy creature. So this is the third key. The devil plays his role in the God's game. He tries to devise his own game, but that game just aligns with the God's game. He just orders him to test the Moscovians, or just the people, right? To see if they have changed at all, uh, if they deserve his mercy. And turns out they don't. And we'll talk about the ending of the book a little bit later. But it turns out they don't deserve anything, right? They're still the dirty, the corrupted, the weak, right? Just crazy. And by the way, stupid. The thing that makes Voland so mad about those people is that they are stupid. You cannot explain them anything, right? Like they're just I don't know. If I were Poland, I would kill all those people as well. Yeah, I just no. Um, the fourth key to the Master and Margarita, and this is my favorite bit because here I would argue with all the scientists who study Bulgakov and the Master and Margarita, because I don't know why this is even a question, but people generally think, and they truly believe that the love story of the Master and Margarita is one of the greatest love stories in the world. And Margarita sacrificed herself to save the Master, and blah 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 blah. So the third key is that the nature of Margarita's love, right? The fourth key, and we need to understand that. And let's continue that story that I just told you. They met when she was carrying yellow flowers, um, and then she throws them away in the sewers, and then Master picks them up and tries to give her, but then she just leaves, right? So here we can see that Bulgakov's sense of humor, and he had a crazy sense of humor. He wrote a lot of satirical plays before he went sick. Uh, Here he makes a whole satirical scene, right? The scene with flowers, to make fun of the sentimental understanding of love, right? And he does a reverse coding. That's what it's called in literary studies, right? The reverse coding is when all the roles are switched, right? So what is usually happening? First of all, in a usual normal romantic story, in a traditional romantic story, the first to propose is usually a man, right? He opens his heart and he proposes to the damsel in distress, right? Tries to save her from that trouble that she has, and then when he does save her, she agrees, right, to marry him, and he is the one to give flowers, and she is the one to receive them, right? But here we have the reverse coding. We don't have the damsel in distress, we have a man in distress, right? We don't have a man opening his heart to the woman. We have Margarita who first proposes to the Master, right? We have Margarita who carries the flowers and then throws them away. So she doesn't even give him, but then he picks them up so they end up in his hands, right? So this reverse coding of the whole romantic understanding of this love story, right, is done here by Bulgakov's satirical mind brilliantly, right? And so he shows that it's not that Margarita loves. Why does he do that? Right? Let's ask this question to ourselves. Why does he do that? Why don't he just write a normal love story, right? Because it's not a love story, right? Because it's the story of abusive woman, right? Not a man, but a woman. For once, let it be a woman who abuses a man, right? I'm sorry for that. But an abusive woman who, if I'm sure you know that Greeks have different types of love, right? In their understanding, and if the Master's love for Margarita is what the Greeks would call philia, right? This is like a friendly, platonic, what we call in Russian, right? Platonic love, when it's not erotic, right? It's not the passion, but he loves her with his heart and his soul and his mind, right? But her love for him, and she does have sort of love, but her love for him is ludus. He wants to play. She wants to play with him. She doesn't love him with her heart. She loves to play. She's a cat that found a mouse, and before eating, she wants to play with him, right? But she will devour him whole, right? But and by the end, I'll yeah, I'll get into that point. But by the end, she will say something that will prove that point, that she was just playing around with him. And so her type of love is ludus, and so that's why she doesn't even give flowers to him, right? She just throws it. She knows that he will pick them up. She knows his psychology, right? And so she gives him flowers, right? And he accepts them. He tries to sort of give them back to her, but she just leaves, right? She just leaves, and then he becomes crazy about her. He thinks about her. He thinks that he's so much, and he thinks that she loves him back as well as he does, right? But to be honest, she doesn't, because in the drafts there was a scene that didn't end up in the well, official novel, right? But there was a nice scene when she was sitting by the Kremlin walls and thinking, just thinking about something, and then one of the and she, oh no, she was watching the funeral process, right, of uh, of some official, right, literary official, and she was watching that funeral procession, and one of the gentlemen from the crowd, he just sat there and tried to sort of, you know, have his way with her, tries to introduce himself, try to flirt with her, and then she just says, "I'm married, just go away," right? And by the way, she's married. uh, and then he goes away, and she thinks, I'm like, I could have had my way with him. Is this an attitude of a woman who is in love with the master? To just see another man and just think, oh, why? He's nice, right? I could have, had him. Uh, I don't know what for, but still. And by the way, yes, she is married, and her husband loves her greatly and respects her greatly. But again, she's a playful one. She's not the one for true love, right? So she finds her husband boring. He loves her, and he wants to do everything. And he, by the way, he can. Unlike the master, who is poor as shit, right? Who can't do anything for her. By the way, when he ended up with his novel criticized, and when he ended up destroyed, right? Um, he didn't have anything to give her, right? That's why he was interested for her, because he was a poor little man, and her husband could give her everything. He was I can't say he was a rich one, but he was a respected person, right? And he was a proper, husband, like, trying to provide everything for his wife, and she didn't care for that. He was boring. It was too mundane. She wanted to play, and when so probably this is where I need to tell you a story of a master a little bit. So when he when he got his novel criticized, and when he burned away his manuscripts, his first manuscripts, um, he happened to find a new friend. Right, it was his name was Alaizi, and that friend of his um, used their friendship to write a note for the government, right, explaining that he's not doing anything, and if you know that in the Soviet Union, right, if you don't work for the government, uh, you're considered a criminal, right? It's a criminal offense not to work. And so he says, like, he doesn't have any money. His book was criticized, so he doesn't have any work to do, right? But so he is just a bad person, and he lied his way around, blah blah blah. And so the master was taken out from his home. His home was confiscated, and he was taken to prison. and he was sentenced. And then after some time, he was released. But by that time, again, he didn't have his home, right? He didn't have anything to do. He didn't have any job, etc., etc. So he just was wandering around doing nothing. And because he was wandering around doing nothing, he was taken to the mental hospital, right? Where we find him, as we as readers find him, right? Because the first thing that we see the master in is when he meets with Ivan, the young guy from the scene, from the first scene, which he who is not a very important character. He's just a character to sort of the only normal character and the only character that sees the abnormality of the situation, right? As we would see that, right? So he's sort of an avatar of the reader, right? A person who is just getting crazy of all those, manipulations of the devil's crew, because all the other people are just suffering, but they're not seeing it as something crazy. But he does. Just he becomes crazy. That's why he ends up in the mental asylum, and that's where he meets the master. And so she actually makes him crazy, right? But then she doesn't know where he is, because first of all he was arrested, right, and then he was released, and then he was put in the mental hospital, and so she doesn't know where he is. He can't contact her, or she can't find him. And so when she meets Voland, and the Azazel is the one who invites her, when she meets Voland, um, he gives her an opportunity to make one wish, right? And for that, she needs to become a queen of his ball, the queen of his ball. And she agrees upon that. She becomes the queen of his ball, which is a whole another story. um, and uh, and her wish was actually to find the master first, right, and to bring him, fetch him to her, so that they can live happily ever after. Or I don't know if happily is a right word for the situation. Um, but during that ball, when she was the queen, she meets this girl named Frida, who is uh, a rhyme to Gretchen in the Master and Margarita, right? The girl who killed her children, and she did that 30 years ago, and she killed her children. She strangled them with a blue handkerchief, right? A blue handkerchief. She strangled them, her children with that, and and she was found guilty, and she was executed, as well as the Gretchen in Faust. And after that, so 30 years, um, every single day for 30 years, the servants of the hell, right? Uh, every single evening, they give her that blue handkerchief as a reminder of what she did, right? And she tries to burn it, she tries to throw it away, she tries to bury it, she tries everything just to get rid of that blue handkerchief. But every single evening, that happens again, right? Like the Prometheus, right? Who was every single day he had his liver eaten by the eagle, right? So that was her torture. And so she comes to Margarita as the queen of the ball, and she says, "Just help me. I can't suffer anymore, right? This is just killing me." And first of all, her advice is brilliant, because she says, "Just drink yourself up. Just today, try to forget everything. Just drink as much as you can, just to forget about that." Her advice is brilliant advice for a protagonist, right? People really think that Margarita is a positive, right, character. It's crazy. She's evil as Poland himself, right? She's witch. She's the queen of the ball. Indeed, it's not her deal; it's her nature, right? And so when she has her time with, well, that may sound wrong, when she right after the end of the ball, when she has her conversation with Voland, um, she wants him to grant her one wish, which is to release Frida of her suffering. Remember, she had one wish, and she initially planned it to be the release of the master, right? But then she wastes, well, probably we can say that, she wastes that opportunity to release Frida, right? And not because she was, pitiful, not because it was her, virtue. No. You know what? As the queen of the ball, she was so proud of herself, right, that she said to Frida, I'll do everything to help her, right? And then she comes to Voland and she says, I want you to release Frida. And we understand not because she was pitiful, but because she cared about her image. If she can't help that, if she can't keep her promise as the queen of the ball, they will not trust her, right? They will not respect her. So she wants that. She's a proud woman, right? So she doesn't care about them. She just cares about her own image, how they see her. That's why she says, I had one wish, right? I want you to grant freedom to Frida. And the Voland does that indeed. He said, are you sure you have one wish? She said, yes. So that's what happens. But then, because Voland's plan was to seduce Master, of course he just brings the Master back, right? So I don't know if Margarita knew about that, right? But I'm mostly sure that she didn't. So she indeed wasted her wish, the only wish that she had, to not to release the Master, but to release Frida from her torture, which is also speaking about her love, right? She forgot about Master immediately when she had Frida around, right? Interesting. So that's the fourth. Sorry, was it the fourth one or the fifth one? The next key, right, to the understanding of the Master and Margarita. Margarita never loved anyone but her own, and everyone that she claimed to love, she just loved to play with, right? That's the main idea. Why is it important? Um, uh, there's one, I'm not sure that you know her, but there's one woman who is considered to be the greatest researcher of Bulgakov's, Marietta Chudakova, and she spoke to Bulgakov's last wife, the third wife, that she actually died on her hands, right? And she told Marietta Chudakova his wife told Marietta Chudakova that you won't understand a bit of the Master Margarita if you constantly don't think about uh, Bulgakov being a grandson of two Orthodox preachers, right? And his father is being son of a theologian, of a person who was proficient with Christian history, right? He was a scientist, he was a philosopher, theological philosopher. So she was sort of trying to lead us on the pathway, right? That Bulgakov considered the only uh, the only proper love to be the evangelical love, right? The true love, the bright love, the creative love, not the destructive one, right? He considered that love to be real and true, not the Margarita's type of love, which is ludus, right? So of course, Margarita has never loved Master. And by the way, another sort of proof of that is that in the chapter 19, where we first meet Margarita, and which is actually titled Margarita, chapter 19, uh, is beginning with very weird sentences that we don't see in any other part of the book, right? The whole book is quite uniform in the way it's written. It's just this very strict narrative, right? Where he just explains you what is happening. There is no personal judgment. There is no emotion there, right? It's just a normal literary narrative. But chapter 19, titled Margarita, starts with the following. Follow me, reader. Who told you that there is no such thing as real, true, eternal love? Cut out his lying tongue. Follow me, reader, and only me, and I will show you that love. It's very atypical of Bulgakov to do that type of intonation, right, in his narrative. He's usually quite reserved in emotions, But here he cries out for that, right? He shouts to you, and that is considered to be his humorous side, or his hysterical side. And of course, he does this satire for the Margarita. That's the only way to explain that, right? Because he starts this chapter that's called Margarita. The first time we see her, the first time we hear her story, and he starts and prefaces that with that type of shouting, which is unusual and weird, of course, right? So yeah, so this is again the next key. Margarita didn't love Master, and that is the main thing. Uh, and next key, which is the fifth key, is the thunder, and this is a short one. So the both of the novels that I told you about, the novel of the Jerusalem and the novel of the Moscow events, they come together during the thunder on Sunday on that Easter week, right? So both novels end with that scene of thunder, right? There's thunder in Jerusalem 2,000 years ago, which is happening at that very day, right, of crucifixion, and there is thunder when Voland and his crew leave Moscow. So what is this thunder about? In the philosophical and theological symbols, thunder means the doomsday, the apocalypse, right? It means the end of the world, and it says that Voland haven't proven that people don't change, that there's still those petty, weak, wicked, uh, envious, I don't know, that all those different types of characters. Um, he actually calls upon the doomsday, right? And we're not sure if Bulgakov's world, Bulgakov's Moscow, lives after that, right? We're not sure about that because he calls upon that. He says, "You don't deserve Yeshua Notzri. You don't deserve Faust, right? You don't deserve heroes like that. You must just," and he just calls upon that thunder, just first of all to cover his travel from Moscow, because they fly on the magic horses, right? So he needs those clouds to cover them. But second, to call upon that doomsday. Says this is what expecting you, right? And the thing is that he wrote that scene in 1938, right? And so what people now think is that he probably uh, thought about the Second World War as the doomsday of the humanity, right? He sort of predicted that, right? Because he says that uh, it's it's this what is expecting you if you don't change, if you keep being as petty, weak, stupid human beings as you are now. This is what is happening, right? It was in 1938, and in 1939, you know what's happened, right? So that's another key, right? This is a book about the apocalypse, right? It's a book about the doomsday, and this book was written and published um, before the doomsday happened. Well, Bulgakov died in 1940, and in 1940, Russia didn't wasn't yet in the war, right? Russia began well. The Germans invaded Russia in 1941, so he didn't see that, but he saw the beginning of the war in Europe, right, in Poland and everything. And so uh, yeah, he was right, probably, right. That was the doomsday of the people. They don't if they don't change, that's what's happening, and that's what happened indeed. And the last one, the last key, and I'll try to finish that so that we can have a longer discussion. The last key is his last phrase, his last words that Bulgakov has ever said before dying. And he said, well, giving the not the finished version of the manuscript, but the last version that he had his hands laid upon, right? He gave that to his wife, and he was dying of what was that? The kidney tissue necrosis, right? So his kidneys were just, you know, uh, dying, and he had huge pains, right? And he was almost all the time using the drugs, right? So he had his mind sort of dazed and confused, and and he asked for a gun quite often, and his wife would hide away those guns, right? But just because he wanted to kill himself, but she forced him to finish, at least try to finish that version of the story that he would approve. And when he handed her, it was a week before he died, or probably a little bit more, but not more than 2 weeks before he died. And he handed her the version that he approved the last. And he said his last words: "Let them know." Right. And now let's think about that. What did Bulgakov want us to know? And the thing is that, and we are coming to the very beginning of the lecture, he wants us to know that the romantic stories of the 18th century are over, right? And there is no way that a new Faust, an original Faust, will occur. There is no way there is a person who can beat the devil in his game. And if you are so stupid or so desperate that you want to play with devil, the devil always wins. Right? That was his message. So that what I want to finish my lecture with, and that what I think that's the main message of the book. Yeah, thank you.